they'll be like, oh, I don't like all this woke. And then actually when there's a trans girl turning up because her son has brought them home, they're like, oh, this is actually fine.
Welcome back to Lustcast. Today we're chatting about dating a trans woman. Is it like dating anyone else, or is there more to know? And what's the deal with masculinity and sexuality in all this? We'll dive into all that and more. But first, if you're enjoying my content, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you're feeling extra friendly, please show some love and get a premium subscription. You get access to uncensored episodes and bonus content. Now let's get into the good stuff. Joining me today is Princess P. How's it going, Princess P?
It's going very well, thank you, darling. How are you?
I'm very good. And thanks for doing this, because I think a lot of people would say, why would you talk about trans dating on my podcast? But it's something I've realized recently that straight men do meet trans people.
Of course, yeah. I think there's a very common misconception that if you're a trans person, if you're interested in a trans person, that makes you gay, but it's very much not the case. So it's dating trans people is very much a heterosexual thing if you're obviously of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And so for straight men, it's very much a topic. And, you know, if we look at how many studies there are of how often trans porn is searched and how high the consumption of trans porn by straight men is, I think it's safe to say that it's definitely a straight topic for the guys out there, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know trans porn was so popular. But I've got a friend and he is straight, but he only watches trans porn.
Okay.
And his reason is that he doesn't want to look at a man when he's jerking off.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but I guess there's so many different flavors of that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't blame him at all.
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. I'd love to know what the actual figures are. I feel like we should pull it up or something.
Yeah, you mentioned studies. I'm like, okay.
It's always like the south of America where, you know, where they're rolling back trans rights and, you know, they're quite vocal about disliking trans people, especially trans women. The search terms for trans porn is particularly high.
Yeah, it's always like that. The more religious a community is, the more taboo something is.
Exactly.
So I think that makes it more appealing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I guess just to kick things off, I'm just going to ask all the dumb questions that the audience are thinking and that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I guess let's just start with some basics. What does it actually mean to be transgender?
Okay. Oh, I love this. We're really going into the basics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, nowadays I feel like gender has become so sort of gender has become a lot. How do I explain that? It's become elaborated on a little bit, and it's not quite as simple as it used to be back in the day. But essentially, being transgender is having a sort of disincongruence, I think is the right word that I'm trying to say, with your gender that you were assigned at birth. So if you're assigned male at birth, as an example, and then you grow up and you think, actually, I don't feel like my body parts match what my head is. Essentially, that's being transgender and wanting to then transition to be that opposite gender that you are. But it comes in so many different shapes and forms, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times we're talking about people who are non-binary these days who sit in between being female or male. And it's like gender is a sliding scale, whereas sexuality and sex is like a static thing. It's kind of what your genitals tell you that you are. Although there is a lot of evidence, I think, nowadays as well, to say that sex isn't as binary as we thought it was, especially when we look at intersex people who are kind of born with sometimes both or different sets of organs.
Yeah, I have an intersex friend and they have kind of similar issues to what a lot of trans people have, just at least amongst my friend groups. And it's been they're kind of fitting in and just feeling confident in their own body. That's been really hard for my friend.
Completely. Well, if you think about it, being intersex, you literally, when you've got a whole mixture of hormones and everything going on in there in your body, and I mean, being intersex, they have so many different iterations. Someone might have a penis and they might have, I don't know, a vagina at the same time. They might have ovaries within them or whatever. It's it can be a whole different mixture of things, but it's a whole beautiful sliding scale. And the more our society progresses, I think that people are understanding more and more that gender isn't just this like male, female, and there's so much more to it. And thank God, because wouldn't that be so boring?
Yeah, and even on like the thing you said about like sex being the thing you're born with, and gender is how you feel about yourself.
Well, gender is a societal construct. Gender is
Yeah.
something that we've like created,
And-
and it's very much like a Western thing as well.
Yeah, and like I noticed that a lot of critics would say that, well, you've made gender up.
Mhm.
And the response to that is, well, yes.
Yeah,
Like, it kind of is made up,
yeah,
because like there's nothing genetic saying men should hunt and women should
no,
do this, and it's all like men should wear this and women should wear that.
yeah,
So
totally. Gender is like it's like a set of rules that we kind of put on people to say like this is who you are and what you are. And I mean, when we look at history as well, it's like changed in times. Like how
yeah,
pink used to be a men's color.
well, men used to wear tights.
Yeah,
and it was
exactly.
normal. It's like,
And high heels were invented for men. So you know what our gender roles and our idea of like what a stereotypical man or woman is change in the next couple of years. So certainly they change literally like by the minute these days. If you look at, I don't know, I'm trying to give an example, Harry Styles,
no, I
and
can.
who's like being like queer baiting people because he's wearing these like fabulous dresses and stuff like that. But that's how our society is changing so quickly now. I'm rabbiting already and going off tangent.
No, it's like it's something I've always related to, because especially when I was younger, being from like the kind of like, you know, working class town I was from, I would often have like my masculinity questioned or my sexuality questioned, just because I'm not like the most masculine guy. But as you explore the world, you realize that there's just so many different types of masculinity, and
Totally.
everybody's got this mix of like masculine and feminine. Like we don't have to be like Andrew Tate, where like every man has to be strong and rich and defending people and like out to like a warrior or something. It's like, if everybody was like that, the world just wouldn't work.
No, totally.
So
No, I have
it's-
my thoughts and feelings about toxic masculinity. And masculinity doesn't have to be toxic. That's one thing that I
Yeah.
will say, because there's
Yeah.
that phrase that people bang around, and there's aspects of masculinity that I think can be toxic.
but
and
of femininity as well. I think
Yeah.
both can be good or bad depending on.
Yeah, I guess so. People have different ideas of what masculinity is. And I think the more that we realize that like that gender as well as like actual masculinity and femininity is a sliding scale, the better. Because like you said, some people can be super masculine with about some aspects of their body and their personality, and those can be really beneficial, really great. But then, you know, what's wrong with a man crying? Absolutely fuck all.
Yeah.
And why does crying then suddenly make you not masculine? Like, why can't crying be a masculine trait? It's just stupid.
Yeah, I think some of the attributes we ascribe to being masculine or feminine are kind of like wishful thinking. Because, yeah, I don't think there's anything masculine about being competitive.
No.
Because I've never met a non-competitive person in the world. Like, everybody's got their domain where they're competitive.
Yeah, I'm not at all.
Oh, you're not?
I'm
Sorry.
waiting to find that one thing, so congratulations, you found
Yeah, well, you seem to be good at everything, just naturally. You're like listing all the things.
But
you
I
do,
like
and I'm
other people to be really good at them as well. I don't care if someone's better at me than something. I'm like, good. I
Yeah,
think we should
you
all be
don't
good
when
at
you're the
it.
best, right?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever. I just don't really
joking.
care.
So can we talk about like the gender transition a little bit? Again, it might seem really dumb, but I think in terms of dating, it is important. And we can relate it a little bit to dating experiences as well.
Okay.
If you are a man and you meet someone that's transgender, like there's different types and stages of the transition where you might meet them.
Yeah, it's true. So I'll elaborate.
Yeah, sorry. I'm super ignorant.
So, well, I guess I'll talk from my perspective.
Yeah.
And, because every trans person is different, whether you're a trans man or a trans woman or you're non-binary. I can only really speak of my own experience. I actually came out as trans a few years ago. I've been living, I think, about 3 years now, full time as a trans woman. And I kind of have been dating through that whole period of my transition. So I've been there at each stage.
Yeah.
So I lived, and again, it's different for everybody, but I lived for the vast majority of my life really as a gay man.
Okay.
Although I always knew that there was something wrong.
Mm.
I always kind of knew from a very, very young age that I was trans, but I'd I had a lot of issues with my mum. I was super, super close to my mum, but I had a lot of issues with my mum, and I knew that she would never accept it. So basically, I kind of put it off to like a later point in my life.
How does it, it might seem like a weird question, but how does it feel to like know you're trans, say?
Fuck, that's a big question. I don't know. I always had an issue with my body.
Mm.
I've never had an issue with my genitals, which is quite rare for a trans person. I think that, well, it's not rare actually. There's plenty of people who are trans who don't have an issue with their genitals, but um, I had what we refer to as gender dysphoria
Hmm.
about things like when I started my puberty and my shoulders got broader and got taller, my voice started dropping, things like that. I was like, I don't like this at all.
Mm.
I don't like this one bit. And I would look at the cis women around me and be like, well, I want what they've got.
Mm.
And I want to look like that. And I feel like that. And there's the stereotypical thing of like, oh, I play with girls' toys and I'd play with makeup and I'd wear
Mm.
makeup and stuff like that, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're trans.
Yeah.
But I always had those things. But at the same time, I had connects, and I love trucks, and I'm a big nerd and things like that. So there were lots of like masculine things I liked. So it was almost like I had this sort of mix of ideas, and I was like, I think I'm trans. And I remember being, I must have been like 12, maybe something like that, and being like, specifically was in the bath and looking at my body and thinking like, I don't feel like this makes sense. This isn't me.
Mm.
And there's funny stories we tell my family as well, of like times when I had to go to hospital because I got an earring stuck down my ear, and the doctor
What?
said, "Why have you put that on?" I said, "Because I wanted to be like my sisters."
Mm.
And I cut my legs shaving in the bath when I was really little, and then got out of the bath, and because I'd seen blood, I fainted, and it was very dramatic, and I had to get dragged outside, and we were like wafting me and everything, and it was again like, "Why are you shaving your legs?" I didn't have any leg hair, but I was like, "Well, that's what girls do." And I was like, I didn't get why like I shouldn't be shaving my legs. And even
Mm.
like small things of I would always put my towel around my boobs when I was a little
Yeah.
kid. And I remember my mum being like, "What, no, like boys don't wear towels like that." And I was like, "What?" It didn't compute with me. Or things like, oh, people go, "Look at that man over there," and I'd be like, over my shoulder, being like, "Who?" And I just never felt like a man.
So it sounds like, especially with the towel and things, at least my interpretation of it is that it sounds like kind of an instinct in a way.
I guess so, yeah.
And
Yeah, I guess there is like an instinct, and there's this, things don't match up, and for some people it's much more black and white, and they kind of they're born, and as they start growing up, they're like, well, I'm a girl. They just know. For me, it took longer, and it was more questioning, and it was figuring things out. I didn't touch a stitch of makeup for like 5 or 6 years, and I grew a mustache, and I tried presenting very masculinely, and
okay.
it didn't work for me at all.
Yeah. Is that a little bit like how a lot of gay guys will sleep with women to kind of discover
I guess
they're
so,
gay?
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess
I've heard that quite a lot.
it's quite common with trans people as well, because you're trying to like mask up a little bit. Like I hear a lot of stories of people who become like weightlifters and bodybuilders or join the army. Like I've got so many trans friends who've been in the army, and because they're trying to like suppress something. And I
Yeah.
mean, my idea of suppressing it was hardly that. Like if you see
Yeah,
what I looked
it's
like,
pretty extreme.
I had this like Poirot mustache, and I was
Really?
like very camp the way that I dressed and everything. So it was always a little bit like, it was always a little bit of something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of like my journey, I think, to coming out. And then I came out pretty much at the start of lockdown. I kind of, the world was coming to an end. I was like, oh fuck this, I'm trans. And then I really discovered myself through lockdown, I guess.
Oh, so I guess a little bit of fear made you just think like, okay.
It was more of I knew what was going on in my head like before that, and I was in a relationship where my partner was very supportive, but again, he was a gay man, so he was like, if you're going to try, we never actually had this conversation, but I knew that if I started my transition, that we wouldn't be able to stay together because he wouldn't have been attracted to me.
That must be hard.
Wasn't really.
Oh, it wasn't that.
Like I love the guy to bits. Our relationship was coming to an end anyway.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so I kind of got to that point where I just knew it had to happen, and then the world was coming to an end. So I thought, fuck it. And everyone was absolutely incredible. But then at the beginning of like, well, sort of going through lockdown, and that's when I started experimenting with what it would be like to sleep with men presenting female. And I was a bit naughty, but was breaking lockdown rules. And basically, there was a period where my front door was like a revolving door,
Oh, wow.
a bit just of men shagging me, basically. And I think that
I say this, I've said this so many times before, but like lockdown was the best thing for my sex life ever. Because like it made dating cheaper.
yes,
Like there's nothing you could do, and faster.
yeah.
It was just fast. It was
Yeah,
good
well,
to
everyone
be
was such a
single.
quick relief. Well, at the very beginning, when we literally thought that you
Yeah.
had to wear hazmat suits or even take a delivery off the delivery driver, I
Oh,
wasn't then. But when we
yeah.
kind of was starting to ease up a little bit, I was like, "Oh, let's get on Grindr and meet some guys." And
Yeah.
and it was the first time that I'd ever had sex where I felt correct,
That's interesting.
because I've always loved sex and had a very active sex drive and sex life, but it's so hard to explain. It was just something missing and something that didn't make sense.
Mm.
And then when I was presenting female and I was looking hell hot and fine, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then as we came out of lockdown, for the first one, I'm getting my timeline a little bit mixed up here actually, because it wasn't the very first lockdown that came out. It was the second one in the UK, which is the beginning of 21.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't been as long as I thought it was. But anyway, I kind of panicked and went back in the closet a little bit for a while, and then it was like, right, full time now, completely. But I'd already been, so there was a period where I'd been like sleeping with men, as I look now,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when I kind of really, really knew. And then when I didn't start actually fully living full time until that was right after the first lockdown. Sorry, the second lockdown. God, it feels like
Yeah,
it was such
there
a
were
blur
so
at
many,
the time.
weren't there? The first one was the scary one,
Yeah.
like you say. And that one I bunkered up. It was
Yeah.
like, I just grabbed the last girl I was dating. I was
Yeah.
like, will you live with me for a bit? Because I'm lonely. But yeah, so it sounds like your dating experience was
shagging first.
yeah.
Yeah.
So was that because like you weren't, say, confident enough to
It
go
was
on
just
dates?
no, it was,
or
well,
just
we couldn't. That's the
lockdown?
thing.
Yeah.
I think it was because we couldn't.
Yeah.
And then when I first started going on actual dates, I think because I had really short hair back then as well, so I didn't even at the beginning. I was wearing my first couple of dates I was wearing a wig. I'm just trying to remember back to how it kind of went, and I was not ready to be dating at all. But I think that because I was so apprehensive about how people were going to take me, and there was an element of how do I explain that? There was a part of me that kind of wanted the validation of men, basically,
I get that.
and it was reassuring, and it was really like gender affirming as well. And if there's any trans people listening to this, please do not date anyone in your first 2 years of transitioning, because it's a really fucking bad idea. Because you start,
Really?
especially if you're starting on hormones or anything like that, your energy levels, your sex drive, your headspace that you're in go up and down and left, right, and all over the place. And you're finding yourself, you're becoming a whole new person. And really, you should be focusing all of that energy on you and not somebody else. So the first person that I actually dated normally and didn't just go over to have sex with, I fell in love with him very quickly.
Wow.
Very quickly. Because I had all this new emotion sort of like surging around my body. And so again, if that's sort of advice to anyone listening who wants to date trans women, if they are very early in their transition, or any kind of trans person, just tread carefully.
Yeah.
Because, especially if they're on hormones, because there are so many variables to everything. And that's not to say that you can't date or you shouldn't, or you can't date someone who's at the beginning of their transition, because whatever stage or point you're at in your life and your transition, you still deserve to be loved. But I'd highly recommend that you don't, and you wait a little bit.
Yeah. And then this might sound stupid, but is it that the person you are at the beginning of your transition is going to be like a different personality almost to at the end?
Necessarily.
Or?
I think, well, again, everyone's different, but I think generally speaking, like my personality hasn't changed at all.
Yeah.
It's more so like a lot of people will feel like will get mood swings, for example, if you're on feminizing hormones. And I didn't experience any of that. I was quite lucky that I didn't really have like mood swings as much, although I'm sure there's a lot of people that would disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I didn't think I had any mood swings.
So is it more that if you're dating someone that's like recently transitioning,
Yeah,
that
it could be
it's
a
just
roller coaster.
hard work? Okay.
Yeah, basically, it can be. It might not be, and everyone's different, but it can be a bit of a roller coaster because your hormones can be all over the place. In the same way that you tread carefully, dating a menopausal woman. You know, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, because if you think about it, a menopausal woman is, you know, her body is changing and she's losing some of the hormones that she's had for her whole
Yeah.
life. So your body kind of goes through this whole puberty.
Mm.
When you're going through the menopause, it's like the opposite of a puberty.
Yeah, I remember my mum being difficult,
Yeah,
let's say.
yeah, I can relate. My mum's going through the same thing.
Uh,
Yeah, so but then that's fun because we can talk about hormones with each other.
yeah.
I know my mum actually,
Like
bless her,
support each other.
yeah, she started hormone replacement therapy, and she's like, I don't like this. She didn't like how it made her feel, so she gave it all to me.
And so what was it like dating, like when you first started dating? Because obviously you went straight to sex, but was there anything they were doing that surprised you, or you were like, oh, I wish you wouldn't be like that, or anything they should learn?
No, not for me, I don't think. Although I will. So, like I mentioned earlier, I have no dysphoria about my genitals.
Yeah.
About my cock, basically. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
The rest of my body does, or has done at certain points in my life. But when it comes to like what's between me down there, I'm fine with it, and I'm
Yeah.
fine with people sort of going there. However, I know that like the vast majority of the men that I slept with, that's why they're there. That's why they're sleeping with me.
Oh, really?
Like 90%.
Okay.
Because I think as well, like at the beginning, I was meeting men through Grindr, and there's a lot of straight men who will go on to Grindr because they're looking for trans women because they want to suck a dick.
Okay.
And they don't want to suck a man's dick because they're not attracted to men, but they want to suck a woman's dick.
I've heard things like this with cuckold fantasies before,
Okay.
where a straight guy will want to suck a guy's dick after it's been inside a girl he likes.
Okay.
But he wouldn't see it as like a gay thing.
Yeah.
He would see it as a submissive thing.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I can see how that works. I think the thing if we're talking about like sexual attraction and like what your sexuality is, like if you're a guy and you're attracted to men, then you're gay or bisexual, whatever. But if you're a straight man who is attracted to a woman who just so happens to have a 12-inch cock, then if you're attracted to her because she's got the cock, you know, solely and nothing else, then maybe there might be something there. But if you think she's fucking beautiful and you're attracted to her body and everything, and then she's like, oh, she's got a dick, great, because dicks are cool, then I don't think that makes you gay at all.
No, so they're just thinking like it's something extra.
Yeah, it's just body parts. Like we've all got varying sizes and difference, and some are weird, some smell, some are big, some are small. And some women have dicks, some don't. Some men have vaginas, some have penises, and some have both.
Yeah, I'm going to sound really naive, but I assumed that when a straight man dates someone transgender, that they would be the giving person usually. I didn't think it would actually be about the penis. I just kind of it's like an assumption, obviously.
That is a very big assumption of you,
like a huge assumption.
And I think that quite often that's wrong. I mean, it depends on everybody.
Yeah,
it's different. But in all my relationships, I've been the giver.
I guess like the reason I thought that was just because, obviously, like when I'm at a drag show or something like that, there's like that. It feels like trying to hide the penis.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like maybe something that the goal is to remove it. Obviously, that's not for everybody.
Yeah, well, the goal is for the vast majority of trans women, you know, the goal is to remove it. And it's because they will have, you know, they'll have dysphoria about their genitals. So they want to get lobbed off. And, but for some people, that's not the case. And I think that as a society, as we move forward and we understand that gender is so much more than what's in between your legs.
Yeah.
And there's more acceptance. And that is the thing that for me, it didn't stop me, but I was like, well, I can't be trans because I don't have a problem with my dick. And everyone that I know is trans, you know, wants to remove theirs. And it wasn't until I started meeting other trans women who were like, actually, it kind of doesn't really bother me. It's just something that's there.
Yeah, I heard it's a really big thing to that some do remove it and some don't, and
Yeah, totally.
it's like a big decision, obviously.
Yeah, well, it's a huge surgery. It's a massive thing, and some people are quite happy to not have that surgery and just live their life having a bit of everything. And then some people would rather have their P turned into a V.
Yeah.
And like I said, everyone's different, and like so whatever. I can only speak from my own experience, really.
Yeah.
My own experience. So yeah, going back to the dating, that a lot of trans people who do have like dysphoria about their genitals, they don't want some guy who's going to jump into bed with them and put their head right between their crotch. So I think it's a conversation to have with someone if you're going to go into the bedroom with them, and if you've not discussed that about their genitals and what they like and what they don't like, you definitely want to go into that space and say, look, I want you to tell me what you're comfortable with, and like, can I go down there? Do you want me to go down there? And if you do, like how do we navigate that? What words do you like to use about it as well? Because I know some people don't like it to be referred to as like a penis or whatever, or so that's one of those things that really has to be a person by person situation.
Yeah.
Like just be normal and be human about it and have a conversation with someone. Say like, how do you like to have sex? I think that's the thing that people don't do enough.
I agree.
And back when I used to do collabs for my OnlyFans page, I remember one person coming over and he said like, I want you to tell me everything you like and everything you don't like. And I thought, this is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
I've never
how
had
it
that
should be,
conversation
right?
before. And it was really nice. And he told me what he didn't like and what he did liked. And we had lovely sex.
Yeah.
And if you want to go and watch it, you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's definitely a conversation we need to have more, because everyone's like, you sort of get into the bedroom, you're trying to have this like passionate thing and impress someone. But if actually, let's just be normal and human about it and be like, what do you like?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think we definitely need more communication with sex. But it does sound like an area where you might not know to be sensitive about it.
Yeah.
If you've never thought of it before.
Completely. But be sensitive about it. And if you are worried about saying the wrong things or anything, you know, just let the person know. Say, look, I don't want to be naive, or I don't want to come across as naive or offensive or anything like that. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable. And I don't think anyone would ever like have an issue with that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do. But so yeah, the beginning of my dating situation sort of started with, like you said, like shagging about a little bit. And then when I actually sort of went out there and fell in love with this one guy who then turned around and said to me that he was in love with his ex.
Oh,
that hit hard. That hit so
sad.
hard because, I mean, I'm still friends with him now and it's chill. It was like a while ago. He was in a bit of a crappy position. I was not in the best position. We shouldn't have been going on those dates, either of us. But it felt even more painful, I think, because it was the first time that someone had shown affection towards me, if that makes sense, towards like the person that I am now.
Yeah,
and then I kind of spiraled. I went on a series of different dates and stuff like that were a bit
questionable.
Yeah, a bit questionable. But to be fair, they're questionable, but I don't have any like massive disaster stories, unfortunately, of dating. I think I'm one of the successes that I've found plenty of men who have just been wonderful and have been super respectful and lovely.
And did you expect that?
No.
Why not?
Not at all. I expected men to be absolute trash bags, because sometimes they can be. And there's an idea through our media, really, that's portrayed that dating a trans person, also coming out as trans, that you're kissing goodbye to your love life, and that you'll forever just be seen as like a sex object or an escort or a murder victim, because that's what we've always been portrayed as in media. There's an amazing documentary on Netflix called Disclosure that I highly recommend everyone watches, because it talks about the media's portrayal of trans people through the eyes of trans people as well. Like, everyone who's in it is trans, so they talk about it. It's very, very enlightening. But yeah, I had this really negative idea of what it was going to be like, and it wasn't the case at all. Don't get me wrong, like, I came across some assholes, and then I came across some assholes.
And the assholes are just awesome.
There was a joke in there. I didn't plan that. I just sort of was like, oh, matron. I was distracted myself thinking about coming across assholes.
Yeah, I was going to say the assholes were assholes in the sense of just players, fuckboys, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
In the same that way they would be to any cis woman. Like,
Yeah.
they were just twats.
I was going to ask if that was partly one of the reasons why you thought maybe dating might be difficult, just because a lot of women also complain
Yeah,
about
totally.
dating.
Totally, yeah. I mean, dating as a gay guy was difficult. Dating as a trans woman is difficult. Dating, as I never dated as a cis man. That never really happened. But dating is fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's horrible, and it's 2023, and it's just a nightmare to get a date with anyone.
Why do you think it's so hard?
Because of social media.
Yeah.
It's that the fear of better options. There's I'm dating this person, everything's great, but I don't like how she sniffs.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to go and find someone else, and hopefully she won't sniff. Whereas back in the day, you'd fall in love with Susie, who lived across the street in your village, and Susie was the most beautiful girl you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
And then you would never see anyone else who was more beautiful than Susie. But now you go on Instagram and you see, people like the hottest people in the entire world, and you can go and like their pictures and slide into their DMs, and it's just it's chaos.
Yeah, I saw someone describe it as like the illusion of choice.
Yes.
That you
Like
think
that.
you have choice, but actually you don't.
No, you don't.
It's yeah, I think it's really I haven't figured out why it's so bad yet. But I kind of deep down I know it is.
Yeah.
And yet I still play that game.
Of course, well, we do, don't we? Well, at the end of the day, we all just want to be loved and have someone's call.
Yeah.
But then I kind of moved on, and I think I dated some really cool people and had some lovely situations going on in my life, and I'm very happily in love now, and it's
which is
very
really
wholesome.
good. And you found that quite quickly, I think.
Relatively, it didn't feel like it was that quick, but it turned out to be the person that I was in love with that I'd fallen in love with was already in my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So yeah, things are going pretty swell right now.
Yeah.
And that's the message that I'll put out to the world, that coming out as trans is not does not mean the death of your love life. And trans people are very lovable. And if you are someone who wants to date a trans person, that does not mean the end of your life either. It doesn't mean that your friends are going to discommunicate you and that everyone's going to cut you off.
I was going to ask about it from like your partner's perspective.
Yeah. I mean, he's totally chill. Everyone knows, like, I met his family straight away, and because it was just such a non-thing, there's like been no issues whatsoever. And I think I'm very lucky that I live in, a big city in the UK, and that like, again, his family are pretty open and they're pretty chill about stuff. But because I'm not naive in thinking that there would be some people who'd have an issue with it.
Yeah.
But they've been fucking amazing.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this topic, is because, the way trans is portrayed in the media is so extreme and so divisive.
Yeah.
And then, when you meet trans people in real life, they don't spend their whole day talking about trans politics. They're just normal people living their lives, just doing their job.
Just navigating around the world and being normal.
Going to the supermarket or whatever.
We're not breaking down the doors of toilets going, let me see your genitals, I want to see your pussy. We're not doing that, unfortunately. As much as the British media would like you to think that we're going in and abusing people in bathrooms, that doesn't happen. And there's maybe like one or two situations where that's happened, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, well, I've told you my personal opinion on this. Is that I live in Hungary, which is maybe one of the most anti-LGBT countries in the world. It's right up there with Uganda,
Oh, wow.
And but traditionally, they have mixed gender changing rooms.
Yeah.
And it's like, if it's been good enough for them for, hundreds of years, surely we can figure out how to just have cubicles in a changing room.
I think that the government in this part of the world and like in America and stuff, they're trying to use these almost like a scapegoat. They're like, it's like a culture war thing, isn't it? We'll talk about this while we fudge with other laws. So, we'll let the people, discuss genitals and bathrooms and stupid stuff like that no one actually cares about when you go out into the real world. Get all angry and riled up about that while we do dodgy things with your politics. Let's not talk about
it. We don't, not too much politics. So everything I want to talk about is, and like when we talk about trans identity, like obviously I'm in Hungary, and spend time in different places, and I feel like there isn't one trans identity. So like things might work differently in different places. So for example, where I am in Hungary, some trans people I know, they don't disclose that they're trans on dates.
Yeah.
And like, do you think like you should, or like what's the ethics around?
It's a really tricky one. I think, and again, that's what that documentary is called, Disclosure, because it's all kind of about that.
That's what triggered the question.
Personally, for myself, like I was like, I'm nearly 6'2", like, and I'm under no illusion that people don't clock me, and I'm absolutely chill and fine with that. I don't give a fuck. But so I always want to disclose beforehand. Whenever I've been on a date with someone, and especially like on the apps, when I used to be on the apps, I wanted to, at one point I thought about almost like photoshopping I am transgender above my head on my first picture, because people would swipe on you because you're like, she's fucking fit. And then then they read my profile and they'd unmatch me. So I want to get it out of the way as soon as possible to avoid any of those awkward conversations. And especially because I don't like, they refer to it as living stealth, where you kind of don't disclose that you're trans. And for some people that's a little bit easier because you can sort of live stealthily. I don't think I could. And I don't want to anyway. Even if I could, I'd still be open about it because I'm quite proud to be trans. But I think it's a person by person thing. I know some people who live stealth and they don't disclose it, or they maybe go on some dates and then they'll disclose it later. But it can be really dangerous. That's my biggest concern. And a lot of the times this is why people are being murdered, because they're going on dates with someone and then they find out later, or they're sleeping with someone and then they find out later.
Which obviously doesn't excuse the murder.
No, it doesn't. But like, people are freaking out because they're like, shit, I've slept with a trans person. They didn't know. And that's that can be really scary. So it can be really, really dangerous. And I think that,
so I can see why some people would prefer to keep quiet, because like in Hungary, like when they have the gay pride march in Hungary, they have to have riot police there to keep like the neo-Nazis away. So it's like, it can be dangerous just to be out in any capacity.
Well, that's the thing.
In some places.
And I guess if you are someone who can live stealthily and, you know, you've had lower surgery and no one would know, then you would rather just assimilate into the rest of the culture and not have to deal with any of it, not have to deal with the prejudice and everything. So I can totally get it. I just think for me, it's just too dangerous. So the image of like someone seeing these pictures of me looking all, thinking, oh, she must be really dainty and small. And then I turn up and I'm like, hiya. And they're like, oh, you're not what I quite expected. I want to get all of, and that's why I'm like, I can't stand people on dating apps who lie about anything. Don't lie about your age. Don't lie about your dick size. Don't lie about anything.
You can lie with photos as well.
Yes, like, exactly. Why? It's just so stupid. I will try and post like nice pictures, but then you always want to get one in there that's very real. I think, because that person, if I have a date with them, is going to see what I look like in person, and I'm not sat there with like a beauty filter and with lights all around me. So I want them to see like the most authentic version of me, because if they're gonna like me and go to bed with me or anything like that, then I want them to know who I am. It's stupid. I don't understand why people lie. Well, I do understand why people lie, because they think that they're going to have a better chance. But human beings like authentic interactions. So keep it authentic, kids.
And back to the living stealthy. The thing that I find fascinating about it is some people say that it's transphobic if you don't consider dating a trans woman. And the thing is, I was thinking about this, and it's like, you can have that view, but then I was thinking about like my job in porn, and I thought, okay, well, the chances of a girl working in porn that's transitioned and I don't know about it, I'm sure I've had sex with a trans woman, maybe not known about it. There must be one. And you think like, okay, does it affect my life? Does it bother me? And you're like, actually, no. So like, it is a good test of like, is it transphobic, or is it, what is the reason that you would say that you would dismiss that whole group of people? Is it just because of the word or the description? because like every trans person looks different,
Yeah,
has a different
exactly.
personality, has different everything. So can you really dismiss all of them?
Exactly. That's totally
Um,
true. But I
so
feel like,
that's why it's like, so in a way, it's like the stealthy thing. If you do, catch some feelings or attraction,
yeah.
like, is it a bad thing? Like, what does it say? It's just such an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think well, I think that the term transphobic maybe is a bit of like of a step. There's definitely some people who won't date trans people because they're transphobic. But
Yeah.
I know that there's people who would be like, but I don't think it's like we'd like to throw the terms like racist, transphobic, homophobic, and stuff like that
Yeah.
around very quickly. But I don't think that someone is inherently transphobic if they don't want to date a trans person.
Yeah.
I
I
feel
wouldn't
like
say so
there's
either.
probably more. It's like, well, they might fear what other people are gonna say, or they might have, uh, there's so much more to it than just being like, I'm a
Yeah.
transphobe. That's why I don't date trans people.
Yeah. The way I compare it is to like how religious people and non-religious people both watch porn and they both masturbate.
Yeah,
But the difference is the religious person feels guilty about it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like there must be like these deep rooted cultural things that because they've been drilled into you for, 20, 30, 40 years, maybe they're just hard to change.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
Yeah. But then there's the whole conversation of like, oh, if you won't date a trans woman, just as an example, who still has a penis,
Mhm.
then that makes you transphobic and stuff like that. And I think that's where it's a little bit more complicated because
Yeah.
people have attractions to different types of genitals, and I think that's okay.
Mhm.
And I mean, like if I use myself as an experiment, I've predominantly only ever dated men. I have dated a trans woman for a while, a long time ago. That ended in an interesting way. That's a story for another day. And I would totally be open to dating someone regardless of what their genitals
Mhm.
were. However, some people have a preference. That's okay. I think so anyway. So I don't think it's completely transphobic to be like, oh, like, and I was always okay with that
Mhm.
from my like when I was dating, I was just going out on the dating thing with people like, like I'm not really into that as a lot of people put it. But at that point, I think where I would get irritated is that they don't actually know what I've got in between my legs at that point.
Yeah.
However, if I had disclosed that I haven't had lower surgery, and then they were still like, okay, I'm not into that, I'd be like, fair enough, okay.
Mhm.
I'm not into getting fucked really. Like I will sometimes, but I'm not super into it. So if we're in a relationship, that's not going to work,
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, fair enough. That's sound. You're not a match for me. That's fine. I don't think that person is transphobic then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be, like you say, too simplistic to call the person transphobic because there's probably so many different reasons why someone might get to that same point. And it could just be circumstances.
Yeah, totally. So many different things to it.
Yeah. And I had this conversation with my friend the other week. We were talking about dating trans people. And he was talking about Thailand. And he just showed me this girl. And, he fell in love with her. She'd had bottom surgery. Is that the correct term? And yeah, he didn't think of her as any other way except just an amazing person he met.
Yeah, of course.
And interestingly, he said like if he'd met her, he might not have met her if he knew she was trans before.
Right.
But because he got to know her, he was like completely cool with it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like some, when you disclose, maybe there's this sweet spot. I don't know.
Yeah, true. And that's what, again, where everyone's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
And but we sometimes we just put these sort of walls up to be like, oh, like I can't date that type of person, or I won't do that. But sometimes you just fall in love, or you fall for someone and you fancy someone because they're fit. We need to sometimes just think we need to stop putting so much pressure on labels and terms and everything, and let's just love each other. And
yeah, I guess dating apps is the problem because
of course, because you're putting people in categories.
You make a decision before you've met someone.
Yeah.
Whereas in real life, you meet people, then you make a decision.
Yeah.
And it's completely different.
Totally.
It's like,
and I mean, we're all guilty of it, and I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going through dating apps, and I'm like, this person doesn't got a job. Swipe.
yeah.
This person doesn't. has an office quote on their thing, so swipe, no, they're going away. And then like I'm sort of going through and I'm thinking, and you're just sort of like going off a key number of things. But if you met those there's people in real life, would you be acting the same way? Probably not.
No, I base mine almost entirely on what clothes they're wearing.
Yeah.
Weirdly, and it's so weird and
Yeah.
snobby. I don't know.
But we put together this like idea of who people are through all this stuff. I play a game with myself sometimes. If I'm on like public transport or something, I go, right, this person is wearing like a nice jacket and then they've got like, that's their handbag. And I try and see if I can figure out like what a person's like from how they presented themselves.
It's amazing
like,
how accurate you can be.
And like little details have been like, you know, or if it's a woman, it's like, oh, she's got loads of makeup on today. Or if it's like a guy, it's, oh, he's got a scar above his eyebrow. I wonder where that came from. I love like trying to like figure people out.
But clothes and bag and haircut, all that stuff, it's just branding for people. And like you can see like what group everybody belongs to usually. Usually. Some people are a bit.
Well, it's funny you say that
surprising.
Actually, because I spent the weekend with a bunch of people, and one of the people who was there, I had an automatic kind of judgment of that person. Not like a bad judgment at all, but then they actually turned out to be completely different. But it was because of the way that they had presented themselves in their clothing and just the way they looked and everything. And the more I got to know them, I was like, oh, you are not the person I thought you were. And that's really cool. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, like my sister, she always dresses up now, even if she just goes to the shop, to the corner shop, because she had like a bad experience where she saw like her dream man, you know, when she was just like in jogging bottoms.
Oh, it happened. It always happens.
So yeah. Okay, let's talk about romantic relationships.
Okay.
Is there anything different you think, like when it comes to like more long-term romance with a trans woman?
No. Is the simple answer. I think, you know, we love in just the same way that anybody else would love.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a silly question, but I think some people will be thinking like,
no,
is it
but
different?
I'm sure they would. Yeah. But it's a very, like I said, very simple answer. You know, we are just as.
I know you say everybody's been accepting, and I think people would be surprised how accepting people are.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone has an opinion of something until it's in their front door.
Yeah.
I think sometimes.
I was going to think the same thing.
And they'll be like, oh, I don't like all this woke. And then actually when there's a trans girl turning up because their boyfriend's brought them home, because their son has brought them home, they're like, oh, this is actually fine and okay because I'm a normal person.
Yeah, people are so aggressive, aren't they, with their words and careless, I think. And then, how they act when it's someone they love is completely different.
Yeah. Totally. But yeah, long-term like romantic relationships, I mean, they're very much a thing that can happen for trans people. Of course they can. There's a very big thing amongst trans people of dating within the transness. That's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. It's referred to as T for T.
Okay.
Where like a trans person will date another trans people. And I think that's quite common because you then have like a shared experience and you kind of understand where each other's been from, and you don't need to have any of those kind of issues or worries.
Yeah, because I guess in a long-term relationship, just being able to relate to the other person is important.
Yeah, totally. And that's really common, I think, especially like, well, I see a lot of trans women dating other trans women, very much so. I think with trans men, it happens less so. I don't know why.
I don't know so many trans men, strangely.
Well, trans men are never the conversation. They're never the topic that people want to talk about. But there's tons of them. I think it's sort of, it's not easier, but testosterone is much stronger. So if you're on cross-sex hormones and you're taking testosterone, people tend to like be able to live stealthily more often.
I think so.
And I mean, if you grow a beard, you're just like, okay, what's a dude, you know?
Yeah, I think it's even without hormones, it's much easier, I think, for a woman to pass as a man, I think.
I guess so, yeah. But then the interesting thing is, on the flip side of it, that when it comes to lower surgery, it's much more difficult to make a P out of a V, whereas it's easier to make a V out of a P.
Yeah.
It's a big surgery to do.
They have to like grow it, don't they?
Well, there's so many different ways of doing it. There's like one of the surgeries that looks kind of like intense is where they will take a graft from either your inner thigh or your arm, and then they kind of make a meat tube. But then there's also meat
I'm
tube.
calling penises meat tubes from now on. I hope you know that.
But then there's also a thing called, I think it's a metoidioplasty, where they essentially lengthen the clitoris
Okay.
And well, when you're on, if you are I always get this confused about FTM. So yeah, female to male, transsexual, then your clitoris will grow quite a lot anyway, and it looks
Okay.
like a very small little dick. It's fascinating. Have you ever seen one?
Maybe, but not
It's
for a long
so
time.
interesting. I love looking at them, and I think they're gorgeous.
I am someone that only 4 or 5 years ago learned that that females don't pee out of their clitoris.
Oh, okay. Oh, darling.
I know, but
But then they can. I think that you can then. There's a surgery that will kind of reroute it so you can pee standing up. I might be wrong, so please don't fact check me on that. But I think that there is. And there's all sorts of different, and like you hear of some trans guys will then have like testicle implants. And so they have like a hole and then like, and it's like a small little cock and it's all really interesting, the different like levels that they go to.
yeah, no, it is fascinating. And I was going to ask about sexual relationship. We talked about being sensitive when like going for or discussing the genitals. But are there other tips that men might need to know before or when they're dating a trans woman?
Let me have a think about that. So I would probably the most important thing is having the conversation, making sure you're on the same page. Something to think about is whether or not someone is on hormones. And if someone's taking hormone therapy, because it changes your sex drive quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
Not for everybody, but for some people. I mean, again, if I sort of use myself as an example, mine plummeted. I used to be so horny all the time, and now I'm just not. But it's interesting because it almost comes from a different place. And this is something that I found fascinating, is that and the way I describe it is that before going on hormones, when you'd get horny, I'd feel it in between my legs.
Yeah.
And now I feel it in my head. Oh, the cat's joined us.
Yeah, because I guess you've experienced like both sets of hormones
Yeah.
now, so you can understand both perspectives.
It's almost like when your body is running on testosterone, I get this like insatiable urge to fuck, and it comes from here.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, I'd love to have sex. That's it. It's like, it would be nice to have sex because I would enjoy it. And then when I'm in like the throes of it, for me, again, it takes a lot more to kind of actually get to that point of being aroused. And
I mean, that is just the cis female experience, isn't it?
And it's so interesting that that is all down to hormones.
I've heard it told the opposite way. I've heard trans men say that like when they have testosterone, that it's so powerful that they start looking at every, person they're attracted to in a completely different way.
Yeah. And my sexual attraction has changed, I think, as well. And I've become much more sexually attracted to women. I've always been like, yeah, sure I would. But now I'm like, oh my God, like I'm staring at tits all the time. And that's nothing I've ever been interested in. But that's been so interesting to me.
Did anything change in terms of, obviously with like the testosterone based desire, it's kind of like, there is that instinct to just want to fuck everyone you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Did that change? Did it like, oh, you need like more, like
more,
say
more
conversational? Yeah,
like,
more emotional.
Not really.
Not really. No.
I don't think so. I think like
I think it's a myth that men don't want that as well. I think it's just,
totally. Well, I think that's because I've always been quite emotional, and that I would want to. Yeah. I did have a very high sex drive, but I like to be schmoozed beforehand anyway. But and now I'm at this point where I just can't be bothered to have sex. And but then also like my sex has become a bit more kink based over the past couple of years because that's more interesting, and I think because now I don't have as much of like that desire to fuck. It's like, well, let's do other things that's more interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of that is like, because I think people get kinky as they get older and learn more about sex anyway.
Yeah,
I wonder how much is hormone based and how much is just natural discovery.
Yeah, true. That's a very good point. What other tips are there?
especially for like guys that are like first time to it, because it, if it's your first time with a penis, say, that could be quite daunting.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I don't know.
But just do what you think that you would like on your own, I guess, or just ask.
Yeah.
How do you like it? Oh my God, I heard the story
Communication all the
over the
time.
weekend and I was absolutely cackling. There was some girls sat next to me when we were out. I was like at a hen party over the weekend and they were talking about how they were referring to this guy's, that they called him pencil dick.
Okay.
And I was like, I sort of turned in and went, pencil dick. And they went, yeah, but not because his dick was like a pencil, but because he liked it to be wanked off like a pencil. So he liked it to be held like a pencil. And apparently, like, the guy literally said to the girl, no, you need to hold it like a pencil and wank it like a pencil. And I think that's fucking
That
hilarious.
must just be how he does it himself.
That must be how he does it himself. Yeah, totally. Pencil dick.
That's so weird.
So, yeah, I guess asking, like, do you like your dick to be wanked off like a pencil?
Yeah. If that's what you like, just go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just think communication is key. And don't be fucking scared. I mean, whatever. Just get stuck in
Yeah.
after a nice...
You'll learn. You'll pick it up.
Totally.
Like,
Totally. But then I've been really surprised by people who've never been, it's their first time, have been really good. I don't think I've ever really had a situation where I've been like, like sometimes it's been people who've had like plenty of experience you would have thought would have been better and they've actually been really shit.
it's one of the things I've learned about sex is skill is not related to experience at all.
No,
It's
I
like
get that.
some people just have like this instinct for it
Yeah.
and like a feeling. Like some people are emotional with sex and
Yeah.
they like transmit it to you. And so many other people, even very experienced people, it's like you're out of sync somehow.
Yeah.
Like dancing with someone that
Yeah.
not in time.
Yeah. I like
Your teeth
that.
clash.
Oh,
You know, like
bad.
everything goes wrong, doesn't it? Like they grab you when they're not. It just,
Yeah. That's the thing about hookup culture as well, is that you really don't, like, you could, one day you might get a good one, one day you might not, you know.
Yeah, that's what keeps you going. Like
You're constantly hunting for the one that's actually good.
social stigma. We've talked about it a little bit, but I'm feeling like maybe it doesn't exist anymore.
No, it definitely does exist.
It does.
Yeah, I think it's just changing. And
And in terms of like, is that in terms of being trans or in terms of having a relationship with someone trans?
I think both.
Yeah.
Definitely both. Yeah, it's getting better, but there's definitely like a still massive social stigma around it. Like,
how does it manifest?
I mean, it manifests in all sorts of different ways, like through, you know, in person and online, and people just being knobs and not understanding, people having wrong ideas of what being trans is, or I got just loads of different ways.
Is it like malicious, or is it maybe just lack of education? And
I think it's both.
yeah,
I think for some people it's a lack of education and they're just not really that bothered or don't really want to understand. But then there's people, there's a small, very loud, like minority of people who are being very malicious, and they refer to them as TERFs. You know, exclusionary radical feminists. Yeah, who are just being really, really horrible towards trans people at the moment. And I think that there's some people who are sort of jumping on that bandwagon, and it's making people panic. It's making trans people panic. It's making those who love trans people panic. And it's really like, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a thing at all.
How do we fix it?
How do we fix it? Fucking hell, ask me. Everyone just needs to calm down and stop shouting at each other.
Yeah.
That's
like,
what.
That's what's bothering me. Like, so many family members and friends I speak to, especially older ones, I don't know, they like, there's always some truth to what they've read on Facebook usually, but it's always like a twisted version of the truth, like where they've maybe taken one extreme example and applied that to say all of America or all of the UK, or even looked at a niche story in America, like this drag queen story hour, which is not even trans people, I believe. Like drag queens are gay men.
Yeah, well, the vast majority. There are trans people who do drag, but yeah.
And I don't know, like drag is like, for me, like part of British culture.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if pantomime is classed as drag, but it's very similar.
Yeah, good old the pantomime day.
Like part of our comedy tradition. Like I've been in drag several times.
Yeah.
I didn't think
it was
for you. Like it was just like, you know, for parties.
Yeah.
Like if it was a drag theme, we went in drag.
Yeah.
And it's just fun. And can be wholesome, it can be sexy. Like some of the best comedians are in drag.
Exactly. But
Like,
people, again,
it's comedy. Like,
people are just being idiots and they're thinking that like, you know, that it's a sexual thing. But I think that's they're sort of holding a mirror to themselves by saying that. And like if someone sees a drag queen, they think, you know, pedophile and sex, you know, weirdo, then I think that says more about them than it does about
yeah,
that person.
it's very strange though, because I know people, especially older people, who like I've been to a drag show with them and they've loved it, and it was them that took me. But then I'll be reading on their Facebook page criticisms of like of drag queens, and I'm like, what's happening here?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
And it's like for them, like both can exist at the same time. They don't see any. It's just, I don't know, some emotional trigger they do.
But I guess that relates back to what we were saying about there's definitely still a massive stigma about being trans though. But the good thing is I think it's changing these days. It's getting better for sure. And like the younger generation like are kind of getting it more so. Like my sister works in a school and I've got plenty of friends who work with like younger people and they're like, oh, they know more about it than we do. And I'm hopeful. I mean, you've still got some kids who are going to be knobs in school about it, but I'm hopeful that as you know, as people grow up and they get it more and like society is kind of just changing for the good. So in the next 20 years, if the world hasn't blown up and we're not all dead.
Yeah, that's always a fun possibility. But
I think we're just at the moment, I think we're living in this age, in this era, a bit like in like the 70s and 80s and 90s where we had that kind of gay panic and like Maggie Thatcher was being very vocal and all that about especially after after and during the AIDS crisis, everyone thought that gay people were after the kids and they were trying to indoctrinate people. And then now we're at a point now where no one really gives a crap about if someone's gay or not.
Yeah.
And I think that we're this point in our society now, we're kind of living through that with trans people, where trans people are being used as scapegoats and they're being used to like deflect and in different things for politics.
Yeah.
So that's why we're hearing a lot of like negativity, but then also there's a lot of conversation, which is good.
Yeah, I think the conversations are good. I think I worried that the trans issue is I don't know, the trans politics is kind of especially been used by conservatives to maybe punish all of the LGBT rights.
Yeah.
I think that's maybe my fear, because at least all my time as an adult, I felt that, especially from about the age of like, I'm in my 40s, so from the age of about 23, 24, I felt like we got to a place where like sexuality really didn't matter.
Yeah.
And now it seems to matter, at least in the media.
Yeah.
Nowhere else, but at least in my experience.
No, I completely agree with you. But I think it's just being shaken up a little bit at the moment. And I think it'll die down. They'll get bored of it and go on to something else.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope so too. I'm being positive and optimistic about it because, if you look back at history, that kind of tends to be the thing that happens. They'll be like, great, here's a topic. Let's talk about this a lot. And then it kind of dies down and then people don't really care about it. But as someone who, you know, has plenty of lived experience of going around and navigating the world as a trans woman, people don't give a shit.
Yeah, and the thing I've noticed is like I'm so easy to persuade. Like whoever I'm talking to that moment, I just take in the arguments. I'm like, yeah, that makes complete sense. And then the truth is usually not that. It's usually somewhere in the middle. So I see how social media really does manipulate people.
Yeah.
You only do see one side, and you have to really fight the algorithm to not go with what makes you angry, which is usually, you know, the stuff designed to appeal to, you know, whatever, you know, that part of your heart that's nervous or
completely agree with you.
afraid. Okay, let's get back to more positive things. Okay, dating etiquette.
Dating etiquette.
But is that just the same as dating etiquette for anyone else?
Yeah, it is. I feel like just don't be a dick. Be normal human being. Have conversations. Be respectful of each other's boundaries.
Yeah.
Be upfront and honest with each other. What more can you ask for? If you don't vibe with each other, you don't vibe with each other.
Yeah, it's just good advice for dating of any kind.
Yeah. I think one of my top sort of pieces of dating advice is to remember that when you go on a first date with someone, you're finding out if you like that person. And like if you vibe on that frequency, it's not, there doesn't need to be this big, huge, important thing. Don't get dressed up for a first date.
This is one of my rules
Yeah.
now. Like,
And don't make huge effort. Like I actually think coffee dates and like little like things like that. I couldn't think of anything worse than going on like golf or like, you know, when like people do a fun activity. I want something that I can escape from quite quickly.
Yeah, well, I told you how like I used to have a drinking problem, and since I've been sober, I can't have dinner with a stranger.
Yeah.
Like you like to sit with someone for 2 hours that you don't know.
Yeah.
The chances of it being stale conversation is
Yeah.
too high. But if I can have a few drinks, I'm fine.
True. I don't mind a first date for dinner. I don't mind that as much, but that's because I just love eating food and going out and stuff like that.
I
But
love food so much, but I'd rather go on my own than
Yeah,
sit with someone I can't talk to.
I think live music is a good one. Like a little small kind of like a bar that's got music up playing or something like that. You can sit and watch them and then kind of like have little chats. And that was like my go-to.
Yeah.
There's like one bar in Manchester that I took quite a few people to, and I feel like I can't ever go again.
Yeah, I think everyone has those places. Like where I used to live, I used to have like one of the nicest bars in the city was just across the road. So I just have drinks there and then.
Fair enough. We all do
it. Come meet my cats.
Yeah.
Basically. That was my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the last thing to talk about is like maybe the most complicated one. Is like masculinity and transdating. Like I think we've touched on it a little bit. But do you find some guys do question their masculinity, or do people question someone's masculinity if they're dating, say, someone that is trans?
It definitely happens. It'd be naive of me to say it didn't happen.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, mates would have a bit of a snigger.
Yeah.
I don't think they'd mean it.
Well, there's that. I can't remember who he is, but there's that footballer that was dating a trans woman.
Oh, really?
Who
was that?
I've got no idea. So a big football star was dating a trans woman, and like obviously that caused, you know, a lot of uproar, people talking about it, and but also actually from what I heard, people just generally being okay with it too. I mean, she's fucking hot as hell, so I think everyone sort of saw her, I was like, okay, fair enough, she's fit as fuck, but still, like I'd seen videos of people chanting, you know, chanting stuff, I don't know what, but you know, they kind of, you can use your imagination and the kind of stuff they chant in football.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
So there's always, people are always going to be knobs about it, and they're always going to try and say something or question something. And I think it'll, for some people, they might question it themselves as well, but there's just no point to it. Like, just like chill out, get over it. It's fine.
Yeah. Like I think in your friend group, like as a, you know, lad or whatever, like if you give your friends that opportunity, expect
about anything.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think if strangers made the same jokes, they'd defend you like hell.
Yeah.
So I think like you've got to expect some banter.
Yeah, totally. I can imagine that like in the lads group, they're like, oh yeah, your girlfriend's got a dick or something like that. But
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
it's bound to happen.
It's just happening. It's happening.
Yeah. But then I think of like,
because like in my industry, like some of the male performers do gay for pay, and of course they get banter about it, but hopefully not to like a level where it's mean. No. And I think maybe that's like the line. I don't know. Maybe the banter's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It depends on your relationship with your friends. I think, well, maybe let's not have the banter. But
yeah, because in porn we're like very like we're so open with each other, because you know when you talk about, because especially you know when you've had a bad day, or it's a difficult job to do sometimes. So we are very open and emotional with each other anyway. So I think you kind of have that permission to have a dig and know where the line is as well.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas I think maybe
if it was just random strangers, that might
you couldn't with random strangers.
No, totally. But then I think if you're having those kind of questions and whatnot, like amongst like about your own masculinity and for yourself, I think you just need to get over it.
Yeah,
is my advice. But then it's interesting because like a friend of mine who, she's taller than me, she is an absolute supermodel of a woman, but she is taller than me, and she has so many issues. I mean, one of the main things I had issues with dating as well was my height, and especially because I like shorter guys, so that was always a bit of an issue.
When I hit puberty, I was like 6 foot from 12.
Yeah,
and I didn't grow anymore.
Yeah,
but I always remember feeling like I stood out.
Yeah,
and I didn't like people looking at me.
Yeah.
So I
And I
guess,
suppose you can relate then.
yeah.
And especially being a tall woman, like I mean, for tall women, even like a cis woman, like we have difficulties. But
It's
this
true,
friend of
actually.
mine, she was like, most guys, like if they're gonna end things with me, they're just like, I can't. But I feel demasculinated because you're taller than me.
Mm.
It's just so stupid. But that's
Yeah.
but the issue isn't with that person. I think the issue is with the system that sets that up in the first place, um, which was set up by men
Yeah, I think,
to make them feel bad about themselves.
yeah, that there's some great studies on height. And like if I'm in a bar, I would always prefer to talk to the tall girl because I know no one else will be talking to her.
Yeah,
So it's just easier.
yeah,
But most guys go for the short one, thinking that's less intimidating somehow.
yeah,
So everybody's like trying to get this same, the shorter they are, really.
yeah. Yeah. But
Um,
then, like everyone that I've dated and like had a proper relationship has been
mm,
very much into tall women. Obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be a
yeah, I
thing.
think people are into tall women. They're just
Yeah.
maybe scared of approaching
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, I follow loads of Instagram accounts about tall women, and it's
Mhm.
like women who are taller than me because it gives me a confidence boost.
Yeah.
I see like, oh, I see these cis women who are taller than me.
Have you seen that one, the tallest one in the UK, and her head's like touching the ceiling?
No, but I'd love
She's
to.
brilliant.
Remember that video from like the early noughties, and it was the woman who was like, she's obviously on top of someone's legs, and it was like a video, and she like she like bends backwards going through the door. I just always and like someone else's legs are like poking
Mhm.
out. It always makes me think about that.
Yeah. And back to masculinity, because some people would say that there's like a crisis of masculinity,
Right.
and like obviously people worshipping people like Andrew Tate and
Okay.
obviously people like Jordan Peterson are always trying to appeal to these like groups of disaffected men, let's say. Like there's incels, there's the men going their own way movement.
Oh, what's that?
That's basically where they decide we don't need women anymore, and they kind of give up on all relationships with women. I think they'll still have sex with them, but
Of course.
they're like that, and it gets very misogynistic.
Yeah.
But
Bless them.
and sometimes trans and LGBT issues do get blamed for this by, say, conservative
Of
groups.
course, because they're trying to just find some kind of reason for it. I
It's
think
silly,
people are
but
just realizing again that masculinity, femininity, gender, all that kind of stuff is just there's a very thin veil, and it's not this like hard thing that we think that we used to believe that it was, and that again in this part of the world we've been taught to believe that men are men, and women are women, and that's not the case.
what's your definition of a gentleman, say?
Of a gentleman,
Yeah. And is it a good thing?
um,
I think it's a positive
my
thing.
definition of gentleman is just is a guy who is nice
Yeah.
and who just does nice things. I don't know how else to elaborate on that.
No, I think it's a good definition. Just do good.
I have my own issues with masculinity.
Mhm.
But I think that all comes from I grew up in Northern Ireland. I went to an all boys school, and I had a really rough time with masculinity with men who were kind of like lads, and
Yeah.
I was terrified of it. I couldn't talk to men for a very long time, and so I have my own sort of thoughts and feelings and opinions about it. And I think that the more people get in touch with their feminine side and they kind of like, I think masculinity can sometimes be quite oppressive,
Yeah.
and it almost feels like a weight on people's shoulders that they have to behave some way. And actually, to be fair, so can femininity, because there's plenty of women who feel like they need to live up to like a certain standard, or like, you've got to wear makeup, you've got to wear a dress or something like that. And that can be oppressive for some people as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like we should just stop making people believe they need to be a certain way
Yeah.
and just be your fucking self.
It's hard though. Like,
It's really hard.
I think, like you said, I think it's just to complain about Instagram again. Like when I was young, I think I was like quite lucky that it was that time when kind of being nerdy and geeky was starting to become fashionable. And so like masculinity was like kind of these quite weak men, but they were strong mentally. And that was kind of cool. But now Instagram's so dominant, I feel like masculinity has kind of gone more about appearances. Like it seems to be really important to take steroids. Like you can't get these like ridiculous bodies any other way than taking loads of gear, like
Totally.
like testosterone, all sorts of
I
stuff.
was watching an old film with my partner the other day. I can't remember what it was, but and there was the main protagonist, and it was like beefed up. But we're like, he has a normal body. Oh no, I'm lying. It wasn't. it was Rocky Horror Show, Picture Show.
Yeah.
And Rocky has got this, I mean, amazing body, but his body now, it just seems normal to us because we're so used to seeing men who are, you know, in doing all these kind of injectable men and women who are injecting all this sort of stuff and look massive. And 10, 20, 30 years ago, however long ago, like that would have been near impossible. You'd have needs to be like bloody.
Yeah, and like the gear
Miss
that
Universe.
they use is
Yeah.
it's so complex and there's so many different types now.
Yeah.
But the number of men I know like taking growth hormones and steroids is mental.
But that's the funny thing about that is as well, that's gender affirming. And like we talk about trans people, you know, taking gender affirming hormones, and yes, they're cross-sex hormones, but like
you're
Richard from
you're
who
doing
goes
the
to gym
same
every
thing,
day,
aren't
is
you?
taking hormones to make himself to affirm himself with gender, in the same way that like cis women will have like boob jobs.
And I think it does come from the same dysmorphia as well, because most of the bodybuilders I've spoken to, like one of my close friends, he's absolutely ripped. He's just like a human muscle, you know? And he's like always complaining about how skinny he is.
Yeah.
And it's like the opposite of anorexia in a way.
Yeah.
Is it still dysmorphia?
Yeah, well, that's dysmorphia rather than dysphoria. I think it's
dysphoria.
so
Sorry.
That's when you're. It is very similar, but obviously the
one's physical appearance
thing that's happening is that it's like it's not that I'm skinny, it's that I'm a dude.
Yeah,
you know?
sorry, I got the two words mixed up.
But it's very similar. Like my mum will do this to me quite often. For like whenever I first came out and I was talking to her, she'd go, "Well, sometimes I feel like in the mirror and I'm like, well, I'm huge, and I don't feel like I should be huge. I feel like I should be skinny."
Yeah,
I'm like, well, yes, and so do I. But I also don't feel like I'm a man. You know?
Yeah,
and
yeah, I think I think the reason I mixed it up is because
but you're not.
It's like I'm thinking it's a physical thing.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's like it was a lot about like attitudes and instinct.
Yeah, but I don't think what you said is wrong at all. I think that they are similar. It's just that when you're trans, it's like the disconnect between your body in the sense of like where you're gender related and your sex and stuff like that. But there's still that disconnect, isn't there, for like someone who is like a mountain of a person who thinks that they're skinny. There's that disconnect and there's something in their brain that's telling them that they don't look like that. But I think then, you know, we look at that person and we go, oh, well, you don't look skinny. Whereas you might look at someone who is male presenting and say, you don't look like a woman.
How should we finish on a nice positive?
Well, how finish on a nice positive?
I think the masculinity question is like my favorite. Yeah. Because, and I think it's the most relevant maybe to my audience is just.
Totally, I understand that.
Don't worry about, I guess, it's just about like being an individual, isn't it?
Yeah. And acknowledge that there is a massive pressure on, I think, on men and on but there's massive pressure on everybody to be a certain way. And you have to remember that all those people who are out there are still feeling that same pressure and that it's okay to feel it.
Yeah, like the same pressure you're feeling to be masculine will be the same pressure that you're feeling to be
whatever.
Yeah.
No, but do you know what? It's interesting because I feel so much pressure. I mean, look.
So I didn't want to say to be a trans woman.
Yeah, but there is.
I wasn't sure like what the goal is.
But I do feel a lot of pressure to present femininely. I don't look like this 24/7. That's for sure. I look like this for work, and but my everyday is like jeans and a top and not a scratch of makeup on my face and my hair scrunched up on the top of my head. And that then I feel like this is how I want to dress because this is how I feel like I should, that's just me.
Yeah.
But then I feel this pressure to be more feminine. And it's just, I think every woman in the world feels that pressure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make you any less of a woman. It doesn't make you any less of a man.
Yeah. Agree. Right. So do you want to tell people where we can find you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I'll link to everything as
my
well.
handles to everything are your Princess P.
Your Princess P. Thank you. Thank you, Mummy.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Like, it was really good. And I genuinely learned a lot.